Deputy Commander for the 3rd Canadian Division. For those who don't know what the 3rd Canadian Division is, I should probably provide a little bit of context there. 3rd Canadian Division is the Army formation that looks after the Army units from Thunder Bay in Ontario to Vancouver Island, and from the U.S. border up through the Arctic. So we've got that as our stomping grounds. We also form Joint Task Force West, which looks after domestic operations in the Prairie Provinces. So that's kind of what the 3rd Canadian Division is. We've got 3 reserve brigades, 1 regular force brigade, a regular force support group, and a training center that all report into us, along with 2 Canadian Ranger patrol groups. So we number somewhere around the 10,000 mark between regular reserve rangers and civilian members of the defense team. So that's kind of us. And now I'll talk more about the Army as a whole. So that's what we'll cover off today. I'm just going to get through a little bit of opening stuff here, which we're doing. Then we'll get into some products that have actually been produced. The Army Commander is taking messaging and sort of outreach very seriously with this effort. So I'm using actual products that are available for anyone to access. So if you are interested in access to these materials, we'll run through those when I get into the honorary toolkit. I'll just show you what some of that looks like. Some of you are messengers already, so there's honoraries in the room and others who are already working this same angle that I am. And so I want to make sure that we see some of those tools. And then we'll have discussion after that. All right, first, we'll see how this works.
Enemy aircraft have learned to respect the Canadian surveillance light attack gunnery. And it is guns and gunners like these who have helped swing the pendulum of war from defense to attack.
The Canadian Army has always stood ready to defend our land and confront threats to peace across the world. But the world has changed. Technology has developed so rapidly, paving the way for new and complex threats. Threats that aren't constrained by geography, that move faster, reach farther, and can strike with almost unimaginable precision. Shifts in geopolitical powers, the effects of climate change, and a hunger for natural resources have reshaped our security reality. To protect Canadian sovereignty and to stand with our allies, we must be ready for what comes next. Today, the Army stands on the threshold of modernization. This is the Army we have, but we are building the Army we need. In both world wars, Canadian soldiers answered the call from Vimy Ridge to Juno Beach. They rose to the moment and shaped history. Today, we are doing it again. Rebuilding combat power up to the division level, rearming with modern, lethal weapons, equipping the Canadian soldier to fight and survive on today's battlefield. Our allies rely on us. Our soldiers are counting on us, and Canadians deserve a future that remains strong and free.
All right, there's a little rah-rah bit for the Army. Get that out there. I did not put that together before the presentation. That was definitely put together by someone who can do that kind of stuff. Okay, so what we're going to do now is walk through the Army Modernization kind of guide here that you can see in front of you. This is a published document that you can access. So I'm just going to take us through because it's very comprehensive. I apologize for some of the font choices that are made here and sizes, so I'll speak to it where we can't read it easily within the group. All right, so essentially the Army is modernizing. It's modernizing not because it just wants to, it woke up yesterday and said we should modernize. It's because we pay attention to what's going on in the world. As I suspect you are all here because you pay attention to what's going on in the world, and Canada cannot do with the existing state of the CAF, and certainly the Canadian Army is a part of that. So we absolutely need to bring up our game to match the threats facing Canada. And that is really all that we're doing, is to try and do that. This is the first time in my career, and certainly I would suggest it's the first time in living memory, unless someone here was involved in mobilization level work getting ready for World War II, this is the first time that we have seen change and resourcing and government pushing us, in fact, getting ahead of the CAF in terms of trying to get us to the next level and the level after that and the level after that, after 80 years of declining after World War II. So this is the actual challenge, is to go from where we've gotten to after all that decline to back up to a fighting force that can actually get in the field and mix it up with whoever we need to. Preferably to deter whoever we need to deter before it comes to that. So why do it now? I mean, just look at the news. Pick any day this week. You're going to see something in the news that makes you cringe, that makes you go, oh my God, what is even happening here? That's really the why of it. We are facing, in Europe right now, a level of warfare that hasn't been seen. I feel like we'll do without that. Okay, let's take that off. Can everyone hear me if I just use my voice? Is that working? All right, then I will just use my voice and we'll do without the feedback. Okay, so that's the why now. And the Army commander sat there, he took the job in 2024, the summer of 2024. He came out of Intelligence Command, so he was doing that. And, all right, cool. And then he took the job as Army commander, well versed with what's going on in the world. He didn't come at this from some weird job deep in NDHQ somewhere. He was in the intelligence side of the CAF. And so he came into the Army and he said, we need to make some changes and we need to get after them now. Because he saw the direction that things are going, and sure enough, here we are. And so he's sort of hit the nail on the head for the time. In fact, in 2024, things are a lot different than they are now at the start of 2026, even. So in terms of direction and in tempo of change, even since 2024, it's unprecedented. So he's taken the preliminary steps to get us in the right spot. Why does land power matter? At the end of the day, you can take and hold ground with only one thing, and that is your land power. You can protect your territory with only one thing, and it is land power. If you can't do that, if you can't get on the ground and control the ground and defend your ground, you can't stop it in any other way. The Navy can't do it, the Air Force can't do it, Special Operations can't do it. It's got to be your Army that actually occupies the ground and keeps people out of yours or takes theirs. That's it. That's how land power works. It's super versatile, can do everything from domestic operations all the way through to major, what we're calling major combat operations, and everything in between. So this is kind of a Swiss Army knife thing at the end of the day. And we need to go from, the little corkscrew part of the Swiss Army knife to the knife part of the Swiss Army knife now. We need to pay more attention there. So that's why it matters. And indeed, as I mentioned before, we can't deter anybody. Like, the cost of taking action against Canada or our allies is really low if we can't generate enough land power to change the way the math works. If someone's looking at doing something is not in our interest, right? So right now the Army can't deter very much. We don't add too much to the fight, and we want to get to a place where we can. So if the top part of the slide is the Army that we have today, and that's how we might fight, the bottom part of the slide is where we want to go. So in the top part, you will see everyone in red is a bad guy. Everything in red is bad. Everything in black is good. If you notice, on the right-hand side of the slide, there's no black explosions going on. And on the very left-hand side of the slide, there's lots of black explosions going on, or red explosions going on. And what we have there is the fact that right now, all of our likely adversaries can shoot us before we can shoot them. Our longest range weapon system in the Army can reach out about 40 kilometers right now, give or take, and our enemies can go up to 100 plus. That's not great, especially if you got to walk or drive or fight your way for 100 kilometers before you make contact with your enemy, and you can't even shoot them until you get to the 40 kilometer mark. You've had 60 kilometers of contact before you've even been able to shoot at them. That's just one example. We don't have an air defense capability right now that's widely dispersed throughout the Army. That's problematic. We've got some uncrewed aerial systems, but we don't have enough, that's for sure. We're just learning about things like cyber and how we might be able to employ those in an offensive or defensive way that would benefit us in the field. So the Army we have now at the top is pretty good for peace support, It's pretty good for counterinsurgency, the lighter end of combat type operations, but it is not in a good way if we have to go up against, say, Russia right now in Ukraine with the force that we've got. Not great. So we've got to get ourselves figured out, and we've been operating at unit level. And I'll get into a slide that shows, individual up to division level in a minute. But that's not really an appropriate level for a unit to be cut off at in terms of thinking and operating. It's too low level. So we want to go to the bottom part of the slide now, where we've integrated all those capabilities in a division framework, which is able to pull all that together, harness all those capabilities, and bring them to bear against our adversaries where we want to do it, rather than them hitting us from 100 kilometers out when we don't even know what's coming, because we don't have anything that can sense that far anyway. So we're making all those changes so that we can get out there and do this, and it's going to look a little more like the bottom part when we're done. That's not going to happen overnight, and we'll talk about that shortly. So that's what we want to move to. So a division, people hear the word thrown around, division, brigade, unit, and then on down. We'll work our way from the bottom up so we can get a sense for it. We start with the individual soldier, so privates and corporals. They form obviously the bulk of our force. Then we move up to the detachment level. That's a small group of folks that are together, 5-ish, that come together with junior leadership and operate as a small team. They come together to form a section. So you might hear that referred to as a squad in U.S. language. That's got a sergeant in charge of it, and they are the smallest kind of piece that is usually that's got a leader that you can point at and say, go do a thing. A detachment's usually working within a section construct. You put 3 of those together and you get a platoon or a troop. You put 3 or 4 of those together and you get to the subunit level, which is a company, a squadron, or a battery. You put 3 or 4 of those together and you get to a unit level. So in this ship, in the Navy, a unit is a ship. In the Air Force, a unit is a squadron. And in the Army, a unit is a regiment or a battalion. That's sort of how we build ourselves. That's commanded by a lieutenant colonel, might have somewhere around 1,000-ish people in it. And that's where a capability would reside. So if you want tanks, you would go to the unit that has tanks, an armored unit, and they would go and do their thing. If you want infantry, that's where the infantry live. We mix and match at that level to combine capabilities into what we call battle groups, and those are where the brigade comes in. So we put those units together under a brigade. The brigade figures out how it wants to mix and match its capabilities, and it is actually where the fight currently lives. The close fight happens at brigade level, which is already 1 level higher than we were in Afghanistan, for example. So that's the level we need to master. And we got to get good at the one after that, which is division level, which is where we put all of the capabilities together under a major general, and all of those brigades come together, and that's somewhere in the 22,000 person range. And at level we haven't even really operated at all since World War II, and we've stopped really thinking at that level through Afghanistan. There was a time when staff colleges would still teach this stuff, but as we got further away from Germany and being ready to fight in the Cold War, we dropped our level of thought down further and further over time. So this effort isn't just get more equipment and get more people and reorganize ourselves. There's a mental effort here too to overcome a generation of lower level thinking and taking casualties at that kind of scale. In Afghanistan, 170-ish dead. That could be like coffee break in Ukraine right now if we were fighting. So we got a whole different level of thinking that needs to come in alongside this, and we're going through that effort as well right now. So for those who don't speak Army, as I mentioned, how we mix up the capabilities, the Army commanders put a couple of analogies in there for us. So if you want fire, or you want police, or you want ambulance, that would be go to a unit and get those. If you want to deploy a division, you're deploying all of those resources together as a thing, fully resourced and capable. So that's sort of the idea of what a division's supposed to do. Brigade commanders cannot coordinate the amount of things you see over here, which you may not be able to see them. So I'll read them off for those that can't read them, just so you get a sense for the scale and the scope of this thing. So the combat arms are the things that do the fighting. That's infantry, armor, artillery, and combat engineers. So those are units, and they'll be mixed and matched to form battle groups to go and do their thing. Combat support is tactical aviation, uncrewed systems, ground-based air defense, electronic warfare, cyber, psychological operations, civil-military cooperation, military intelligence, military police, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, signals. And then we've got logistics, maintenance, health support, and personnel. That doesn't talk about military police, doesn't talk about how to handle prisoners of war. It doesn't talk about a number of other things that would be also included in that division. There's no way that a brigade commander can do all that. So we're grouping all that and giving a division commander with a 2-star, a major general rank to put all that together. So that's a lot for those guys to manage, especially when we haven't really deployed more than about a little over 1,000 as a group for quite a long time. So the army we have is currently broken down geographically. We've got 4 divisions in the army of today. They are spread out from a sort of Atlantic. Then we got one in Quebec. We've got one in Ontario. And then I've already mentioned the 3rd Canadian Division in the West. And then we've got CATC, Canadian Army Doctrine and Training Center. So that really comprises the army. We've got the Canadian Rangers in there as well. So that's us as an army, geographic. So the West, for example, I've mentioned has got a reserve mix, a regular mix. It's got Rangers in it and civilians. It's kind of got everything in it. There's no way it's built to fight. The 3rd Canadian Division is not built to go out as a division and go fight like you saw in the previous slide. It's not set up for it. It's an administrative kind of grouping of units and resources to look after them. So we're reorganizing the army from that into a functional model as opposed to a geographic model. So we're going to form up into 3 divisions and a training command of some kind, training formation, which is probably going to be called Canadian Army Doctrine Training Center at the end of the day. Our current divisions are all commanded by Brigadier-Generals, where a division commander is typically a Major General. So that's going to be a change when we get to this structure. And the Doctrine and Training Center, currently commanded by a Major General, will be commanded by a Brigadier-General. So the divisions that we're going to move to are a Defense of Canada division. That is where largely the reserve elements of the Army will reside. So the 10 Canadian brigade groups across Canada and all of the Canadian Ranger patrols will fall in under that division. It'll be headquartered in Montreal, and as the name implies, it's focused on Canada. I think we've got some work to do defining what mobilization looks like for Canada. And then once that's figured out, we'll be able to understand better what mobilization tasks will come to this division. Because if we've got the maneuver division, which I'll talk about in a second, with all the regular force assets in it, the reserve assets are in the Defense of Canada division. That's where we're going to grow the next division out of. That's where we're going to replace casualties in the maneuver division if it has to go fight. That's where the 1st Canadian Army would come from if we have to mobilize for World War III or some regional conflict. So that's got to be defined. There's a bunch of work going on mobilization and NDHQ right now. And we'll see where it goes. When you hear things like 300,000 people coming into the reserve, that's intended to provide a base for that mobilization. Early days on that, no, it's not meant to be all civil servants, for those who were following that fun story in the media a little while back. It's intended to be a place where Canada can mobilize out of faster than if we just took people in off the street. So that's where that's going. So that's the Defense of Canada division, like I said, out of Montreal, where it'll be headquartered, and it'll command all of the 10 brigade groups, reserve brigade groups across the country. It will take on responsibility for domestic operations in due course. It's not set up now. And the date for all this is 10 September. Like these changes that I'm talking about on this slide are set for 10 September right now. They could slip. But the Army commander is got his foot on the gas. General Wright wants this to happen. And I can tell you the folks that are looking after careers in NDHQ right now they got some work to do to figure out how they're going to rearrange the plot for everybody out there that's getting posted this summer. So that's one. The maneuver division is going to be our fighting division. Its purpose is to go and fight if it needs to fight. It's the thing that needs to learn how to fight as a division and bring that back into the Canadian Army. So that's the 3rd Canadian Division right now is doing the homework on that, because that unit that division will be based out of Edmonton, which is where my current headquarters is. It's where all the biggest training areas in the country are, and you need a big training area to take 20,000 people out. You can't just do it like in the back parking lot or something and go play Army. You need a big space to kind of work at that level. And they're going to be getting ready for war. And that's really it. All the new capabilities will come into that division. All of the training and whatnot to get it to that level will happen there. And we'll learn from them about how Canada is going to fight. So that's the maneuver division. The support division is going to take all of the what are currently division-focused support groups, and they're going to take them under one wing. Not wing's an actual thing. For those of you in the Air Force, my apologies. We're going to take all of the Army bases under one division headquarters, and it's going to look after the support requirements for the Army across Canada. So for those who are in logistics or a sustainment background, there's going to be a ton of work required there. We've got one of the potential drawbacks of this approach, whereas regionally right now I can go talk to the base commanders, I can talk to the regular force, I can talk to the reserves, I can talk to everybody. As the deputy commander, I can kind of arrange things a little bit. Now I would have to go up to the Army, across, down, and then back down to another division to do basic things together. So there's a whole bunch of tunnels that are going to have to be built between these divisions because they're all now national divisions, and we still live and operate in an area. So we got to figure out how that's going to work. And the training formation, like I said, is largely going to look like what it does right now. A little bit of change there. The schools that currently report into divisions will report into that doctrine and training center, or that training formation, and the reserves will form battle schools that will be cut across to work for the trainers as well. So that's the big picture structure. In that, there's so we call L2. So for those who don't speak CAF very well. L0, if I say L0, that's level 0. That is essentially the CDS, and the top end of our house, strategic joint staff and whatnot, is sort of the L0. L1 are all of the environmental commands, so you've got Navy, Army, Air Force, that's L1. L2 would be that division level that we're talking about now. Level 3 is all the brigades, or you may hear me say formation sometimes. That's where they live. And level 4 is units, and we don't talk about level 5 or 6. It gets weird if we go too far down. So we typically cut off at L4. So the work right now is being done at L2 to figure out how we're going to put all this stuff together by 10 September. So you can imagine there are division modernization teams across the country that have stubby pencils and are asking lots of questions and gathering lots of data to try and crunch all this down, so that when 10 September rolls around, there's an actual workable plan in place to make it happen. So the Army Commander is given his broad direction, which is we're moving this way, and he's now released that down to the division commanders to do their homework and get that right. So that's the first thing that'll happen, is all those L2 changes. The level 3 changes, there'll be some additions to the Army. Like, we're actually going to grow here. There's going to be a Fires Brigade, for example. So Fires is a fancy way for talking about artillery. So we're going to be grouping and creating another brigade of artillery, for example, a brigade for logistics and sustainment support. So we're growing new level 3 headquarters to feed that maneuver division, and then we'll see what it looks like after all that's done. So there's a ton of work here and a ton of growth. In fact, we're going to add at least one more armored regiment to the Canadian Army to pull this off, and that's in the early stages. At L4, at unit level, not a lot of changes up front. But as we start to figure out how we're going to fight, the way we're configured now, particularly in the Army Reserve, is essentially unchanged since the end of World War II. Like, the Canadian Scottish has been an infantry regiment forever, and the 5 Field Artillery has been an artillery regiment forever. We may need uncrewed aerial systems to be taken over by a unit. We may need a new capability no one ever thought of, like look after the robot dogs or whatever. Who knows? But the idea that we're not going to be changing our roles is not a valid assumption. What the Army Commander has said, and I know there's a number of reserve folks in the room, is we're not going to shut down any units while we go through this. We're going to keep all our units because we may need all of them. We may need more of them. So we're not going to get rid of any units, but we may be changing roles. We may be changing the way that you're grouped and the way that you operate. So there's a lot coming here. Right now it's at that L2 level to get those 4 things figured out. And then we'll trickle it down and trickle it down and trickle it down. Okay, inflection point. I think, Paul, you sent that out as homework. There'll be a quiz. No, there'd be no quiz. Inflection point is all about... Yeah, I know. I got you. It triggers the old tinnitus as well, eh? Sound of freedom, everybody. It's the sound of freedom. Okay, so inflection point is really the Army commander's pitch for why this is important. You're all in the room, so you're kind of, I'm suspecting, unless there's secret like heckler in the room, everyone's kind of got this already, that the threats to Canada are real, that we don't have time to just sort of twiddle our thumbs and bump along. We need to take control and actually grow and increase our capabilities in the CAF and in the Canadian Army specifically. So I won't really spend too much time there. You can read through it if you like, but it lays out the case for change. And I think it's a fairly good document. It's about 22 pages long, not that long. And it's not like dense 4-point font and you need the mic. It's written for the consumer to consume rather than a doctrine manual or something which would put you to sleep in about 5 minutes. I encourage you to have a read of it. One of the things that's come out of the estimate really obviously to us is that industry is not able to keep up with this level of change. And I don't blame them. Like, CAF, you've hurt me before. You know, we went and put a bid in on the thing and then the money never came through. Or government changed and didn't follow through on the thing. Or we started this 15 years ago and we finally got pistols. So I don't blame industry for not being like right there at our beck and call to immediately make all these changes. So our job there is to find our partners, to encourage innovation, encourage investment in defense industry, and be a good partner. So that's one thing that we absolutely need to do, because it doesn't matter how many soldiers we have, when our opponents can throw technology and resources at us that we don't have. We need both. We need to do both things. Timeline, I've already mentioned. 10 September is the current date for the switch over to the new division model. And then it'll roll out to 2040. Now, 2040 was a good date in 2024, right? When this was massively innovative, and the idea of getting to a division level for a Canadian Army that had really atrophied down so much was the state of play. And I think in January of 2026, 2040 is not going to cut it. I would suggest that we are going to be spurred, and we can already see it coming out of government, where they are spurring us to spend our money and get picking up the pace. Pick up the pace, spend the money, get the capability, grow, get stronger. National security is a big deal. So catching up to the government is something we are definitely not used to doing. So we'll see what 2040 looks like. I feel like that's going to be aggressively accelerated, and with a $9 billion windfall just thrown at us in the spring, we are having trouble spending it. Like, you can't just go buy Paul a helicopter. If you want to buy Paul a helicopter, go ahead. We can't just buy one helicopter and we're done. We got to buy big capital projects. Industry's not there for it. So we got to spend some time. So there's the 4 lines of effort that you can see that the Army commanders laid out for us. We need to grow. We need to invest in the capabilities that we require. We need to have depth to it. Like, we can't have one missile that's all shiny and pretty. We need 1,000 missiles that are all shiny and pretty, ready to go. So we need to kind of get that depth, and that includes personnel and all manner of equipment and expendables. And then we need to be ready for that full spectrum fight, like all of it, from 100 kilometers on in or more, being seen all the time, operating in an environment where we can't guarantee we have communications capability, or we can't guarantee that our systems work properly. Right now, if our radios stop working, everyone just goes to cell phone. Well, that ain't going to work if we're in a fight. That's not going to happen. So those are just some of the examples of things that we need to get our heads around and get the capability and the mindset ready for. Because right now we're not quite there. The last time that we really focused on things like a defensive fight, which we kind of see in Ukraine right now, is a long time ago. Casualty evacuations in Afghanistan, you have a casualty, you freeze the battlefield, just like there's a car coming for road hockey. You freeze the battlefield because we have overwhelming firepower. You bring in a helicopter, get the casualty out, and then it's game on. You do that right now, you've lost the helicopter, and everyone that was around that casualty is also a casualty, because the enemy knows there's one there, and if they see you group up, they're hitting you with artillery and whatever other resource they've got. Mentally, that full spectrum fight is, like I said earlier, a big change that we need to make. Yeah, and you'll hear persistent at scale and lethality and blah, blah, blah. All that kind of good buzzwordy stuff. Yeah, it's good. This is good stuff. The equipment priorities, right now the Army's got 50 major capital projects. Now, when I say major capital project, it's not like the Air Force with F-35s, which are massive outlays. It's 50 major for the Army capital projects. It's not like new frigates or destroyers, right? But you add up 50 different projects that you need to get going. You need new tanks, we need new rifles, we need new everything. That's really hard to manage for the team in Chief of Staff Army Strategies team, who's doing a great job, by the way, but 50 projects is too much. So the Army Commander wants to focus on the ones you see up on the screen there. So long range precision strike, he really hates the idea of unopposed opposing forces with a 60 kilometer range advantage over us. Doesn't like that at all. And one of the issues we're finding is we're going to get weapon systems that can strike up to 300 kilometers in the Army. That's nothing that's like, what? Like, our minds don't go that far in the Army. So that's one example of another thing we've got to figure out. Indirect fire. So our artillery is not in a great state today. We got M777s towed tube artillery that isn't really fit for purpose right now. That is no way to run an army. You can use them in certain capacities, but it's not a way to run an army. So we need to modernize there as well. Then we've got ground-based air defense. Absolutely. Like, again, we've learned some lessons that were not necessarily great ones in Afghanistan, where there was zero air threat. Bosnia, zero air threat. Like, if it flies, NATO dominance over the skies was guaranteed. Right now, that is not the case. And so we need to get back to ground-based air defense. We've got some systems deployed in Latvia now, and we need to do more and more and more of it. So we're going to get back to that. And the Arctic turns out to be a thing. One of my jobs in the Army was to be the Canadian Arctic Strategy lead for a year with Canadian Army Land Warfare Center. And I can tell you that the Army doesn't really like the Arctic very much. It's really cold up there. There's no roads up there. Like, does anyone know how many roads we have that connect the south of Canada to the Arctic Ocean? One road. How much of Canada's landmass is comprised by the Arctic? 40%. Yeah, so this is no place for an army to think it's going to operate with roads and rail and everything else that we normally set up. So we've got a bunch of work to do to get ready, and one of the early steps that the commanders identified is having at least basic mobility, even if we need to rely on the Air Force and the Navy to get those vehicles where they need to go, because there's just no roads up there. Another factoid, here's a fun one. So India, country, big, is about 300,000 square kilometers smaller than our Arctic, but we need to put 10,000 more people for every person we have living in our Arctic right now to match their population. So it is real sparse up there. Anyway, I say that because it's an important theater for Canada right now, and the Army's trying to figure out how to get back up there and take it under stride. Integrated communications and whatnot, all of the pieces to knit all that together are his kind of fifth priority. He says the four big ones and then the one that pulls them all together. We are in a state now that's kind of unacceptable for where the world's at for technology, and the Army Commander's feeling that acutely. So those are the priority areas for the Army Commander. He's moving out on the other 46-ish projects as well, but those are the ones that he's spending his time on to make sure that we get those through. And the first one, long-range precision strike, we've been approved by the Americans to get some high-mobility artillery rocket systems for Canada. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking at. This is typically the one that I get when I'm talking to the public, like, where's all the money and how can we tap into that? How can we help you spend your money? So if you know people that are looking to spend money, let me know, because we are interested in finding ways to spend our money. This one, I won't read through it. This is his concluding kind of argument why this is important to be taken seriously by Canadians in general. And I think it's fair to say that if the CAF hasn't taken this stuff overly seriously over its existence, I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus here, but the world changed definitely when Ukraine and Russia kicked off. And then we'll leave you guys to speculate on any other changes that have gone on since then. But we absolutely need to change from where we were to where we need to go. And if I think you are all on board there, we need to get that word out to average Canadians who maybe don't understand that the threats here are real. Threats to our sovereignty are real. Threats to our allies are real. And it doesn't take too many dominoes to tip in the wrong direction before we're facing something where we really do need a massive national security apparatus and a really effective CAF to underwrite the country. So that's kind of the argument that he's laying out here. All right, this I'm going to show you, not to go through in detail, but because I think it's good to see the level of communication that's going on. And Jamie, as an honorary colonel, that doesn't scale very well for you guys, so maybe we won't go through it. But this is available to our honorary network to tap into and get all of the up-to-date public affairs products, all the reference material. Inflection point is in there, for example, etc. So all of that material is in there. This presentation's in there. The fancy little video we saw is in there. There's our, for example, that's a capstone operating project. And so we're trying to make these tools available for not the public overall, but for the honorary colonel network to use these to spread the word out. And we'll see if we've got enough connectivity to pull it up. We're stuck between bad connectivity on this end and trying to tunnel into an NDHQ system on the other end. So this could take a while. All right, failing that, we'll ignore it and move back to the presentation. Okay, so I'll just wrap it up then, and then we can get to the good stuff, which is you guys asking me questions and me tap dancing as best I can to answer them. All right, so first off, I think the argument's been made, I think, pretty well. Whether you need to make that argument in uniform by government officials or just watching the news, that this needs to happen. And not just for the Army, but the Air Force, the Navy, like the whole bit. The only element of the CAF that I would say is currently completely fit for purpose is our special forces teams. Like the CAN-SOFCOM is like right there, and the rest of us need to kind of knock a bunch of rust off, get a bunch of new stuff, grow, and get our heads into the game at this major combat operation level. We've got to get together with industry, with other government departments, and with the public to pull this off. This can't just be the Army trying to do it all by itself. We don't have the levers to do that. So we need to work with others to get that done. And we got to pick up the pace. I mentioned 2040, like I may be getting jacked up by my boss after this for like contradicting what he's laid out, but I don't think 2040 is going to survive contact with reality. We need to move way faster than that. And we got to work on dissolving barriers that are in our way to get there. So I think that's probably it. I'll turn over the floor to you guys and ask if you got any questions or comments. Boom! All right, over there.
Yeah, thanks. So, my proviso as usual for the Q's and A's. We have a limited amount of time with the General here. Concise, on target for the topic, and framed as one question. And Charles, you're going to be the moderator for this.
Acting Sergeant Major.
Acting Sergeant Major, and you have the privilege of the first question.
Thank you. Don't make me yell at you. Ask the question, sit down, be quiet, listen to the answer. General, thank you very much. Très intéressant, merci beaucoup. So, 3 components, new equipment, new structure, new thinking. The first 2 we get. Tell us how we're going to change our thinking.
Yeah, that's a little trickier because the worst thing is to unlearn something. Like get someone that knows something to unlearn it and take in something new. So there's going to be a whole bunch of that. I think it's going to come down a little bit to rewarding the behaviors we want to see, to be honest. And we've got a lot of work to do with our training command to get the new thinking in a structured way into the force as a whole. Right now there's a ton of innovation and things going on at L4, so at the unit level and below. Soldiers are watching YouTube and they're figuring out new ways to do stuff, and it's really exciting. And there are some pockets across the force that are doing that, but it's sort of disjointed right now. So it's going to come down to the training formation, which is where they are supposed to gather all that and push it out to us. And that's a major effort for Commander CAD TC right now, is to get on top of that.
Thanks, sir. First question, Jim.
Thank you for the clarity and energy of your presentation. Most fascinating indeed. I've long maintained that we are, in fact, wrestling with a legacy which is little short of obscene. The criminal failure of our politicians and others to address the very issues that you've enumerated. There are, and I'll come to my question, and that relates to personnel and timing. Because when I look forward, if you accelerate from 2040 to, for example, 2035, what I can see is that at that very moment, we are going to have new submarines, new destroyers, new F-35s, and all of the kit, hopefully, that you're in fact eager to achieve. And we don't have enough people. So how are we going to orchestrate the timing? Because there's going to be a Clapham junction in the middle of the 30s when we're really going to be exceedingly stressed as an organization to absorb and utilize the new equipment. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And casting our minds forward in time and synchronizing, kind of tricky for us sometimes. We haven't had that problem that much in the past. So what I can say is the CDS has been really aggressive about getting our recruiting in order. So she's been great. She's made a bunch of changes. Is it 100% perfect? No. But she's made a bunch of changes to make it a lot easier to get people in the door. So that piece is happening. We had, I'm going to say 70,000 people apply to join the regular force last year. We enrolled 7,000. So we don't have a problem with people. We have a problem getting them through our systems, and our bigger problem is getting them trained. So we can recruit more. We could enroll more than 7,000. But what we can't do right now is get them all on a basic training course and then through their, get them up to what we call the operational functional point because of our missing middle, so-called. Like we don't have enough sergeants, master corporals, and folks that actually develop the next round of CAF members. So that's where we're working. That's the focus right now, is to get there. And then hopefully, again, execution risk is a thing. You can have all the best plans in the world, but we got to execute them. But right now, the most promising thing I can see is that all of the L1s are currently looking at that and going, we got to fix this. And it's not like, oh yeah, operations is shiny and I've got to do that, which has been our Achilles heel in the Army forever. Oh, shiny operation, don't worry about recruiting. Now everyone's focused on all of it. So we're in a better spot to possibly get where you are identifying the risk right now in better order than we are right now.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for your presentation today. You were talking about how the Canadian Army wants to, or should, expand into northern Arctic areas with infrastructures, new technologies. I was wondering how maybe other aspects of new technologies, such as AI or drone warfare, such as we're seeing in Ukraine right now, how that can play into the future of the Canadian Army, if applicable, or what are your projections?
Yeah, so the last two, just in general, leave the Arctic out of it, like AI and UAS and other systems that are coming online. We're taking all that very seriously. We've got an issue around, for example, data sovereignty as well. The leaders in AI right now, as far as applying military force and whatnot, are definitely the Americans, and we're kind of in a fun relationship with them at the moment. And so we're thinking about how does Canada develop its own sovereign and secure AI that won't be affected by others. So that's a piece. I will say this, like, now it's a bit dated now, but a year ago, October, I was in Ottawa in what they call the Executive Leadership Program. So they take all the BGens and we get our heads shrunk and all that. And the focus was AI, and they had an 18th Airborne Corps colonel along with the Canadian brigadier that's down there as a liaison, and they talked to us about the systems that they're developing, and they're working with us on it too. And he said, look, we set this thing up and we wanted to get 20 targets identified or inferred through various sensors in a large exercise that was being run in multiple sites across the US and Europe. And we said, if we get 20 targets from this thing, from this AI system that's monitoring and trying to figure it out, within 24 hours, we're happy. They flipped the switch on, and by lunchtime, they had 400 targets. So AI is massively powerful. And they weren't just targets of, I identified that because I saw a picture of a thing, or I got a report on the thing there. It also did the thing where that's there, that's there, that's there. To do all those three things, it means something else is probably here. So it had actually identified and inferred targets. So the biggest problem there is servicing them all. So AI is a massive issue. We got to get our ethics right around AI, like now, because our adversaries won't. And when it's time to use it in anger, we better have our identified where the humans in the loop, on the loop, and all that kind of stuff. Same with UAS. We just got to get more of them. When it comes to the Arctic, the Army is probably looking at anti-access and area denial as one of its tasks. Surveillance is likely to be a task up there. And then we're not expecting any more than we expect the Chinese to land in Vancouver Island in an amphibious kind of way, or the Russians come and land in St. John's. That's likely not a thing that's going to happen in the Arctic either. So it's likely going to be smaller level stuff where the Army is helping another government department and being present there. I mean, if we're not there, someone else will be there. So we need to be present. Operation Nanook, which is the Canadian Armed Forces operation an ongoing operation in the Arctic, has gone from 4 to 8 sub-operations a year. So not persistent. The only persistent thing we have up there are the Rangers, Canadian Rangers, but the CAF as a whole is up there twice as much as it used to be, and that trend is just continuing. I don't know if that answered your question, but there it is. Okay.
You had a chart with the 4 new divisions that are contemplated Canada maneuver support and training. Other than scale and maneuvering, how does that compare to the Canadian Army in 1945?
Well, the Canadian Army in 1945 was the first Canadian Army. It was an extant force of 5 divisions and a bunch of other stuff, divided into 2 corps. So the next level above division is corps, which is more than 1 division grouped together. And the next level above that, more than 1 corps, you have an Army headquarters. So how does it compare? We will have 1/5 of the combat power.
Beginning with the Canadian support and training parts, how are those organized to keep that size Army in the field?
Yeah, I can't.
Was it 1 division for Canada in 1945, for example?
I can't speak to it. I'd need to refer to a historian on that. I'm not going to be able to give you an intelligent answer, so I'll just back away. Okay.
Camp?
General, thanks for being here, taking the time. You've got a full-time job. It's great to see someone who's speaking in full uniform. Well done for coming out. What keeps you awake at night?
That's a great question. What keeps me awake at night is that we're going through all of this change, which we need to, in a time that the world is changing faster than we're changing, and we may need to change again and again and again, and that we may get lost in all of that. In particular, getting back to major combat operations requires an awful lot more out of the Defense of Canada division than I think we are thinking right now. So I think we got a little bit of time to let some things soak in as we go through this change. And I'm hopeful that when the Canadian Armed Forces as a whole, when the CAF comes out with a mobilization plan, that the Army can then plug that back in and figure out, because right now, if that maneuver division had to fight, there's no process to make the next division, so we have 2 divisions in the field. There's no way to get folks across to replenish battle casualties, and so that kind of work still needs to be done, and that keeps me up. In addition to the fact that also relates to deterrence and the ability to make the costs of doing something against Canada's interest higher by having a force that is more able to be sustainable and grow and whatnot. So for me, that's what kind of keeps me up right now.
Bill and you. So first, Bill.
Yes, sir. I want to drill down a little bit to the maneuver division. Combat service support. Is there a concept yet how that's going to work? Will we have service battalions to cater to the brigades, or will they have to go down to support division and borrow something from QM there?
Yeah, so the intention there is to form a service brigade, a sustainment brigade. So it'll be a fires brigade, a sustainment brigade that'll allow that division to plug into a core services area and then project down the support down the line and do all the normal ground lines of communication piece. So within there, yeah, service battalions are still a thing. Lessons in Ukraine tell us that that's real tough. Like sustainment in Ukraine is telling us it's really hard to do. And if you come together, you die. So the whole method of delivery, the tactics, techniques, and procedures need to be updated. But the structure will look probably the same. It's just the way it executes its tasks are likely to be a little bit different than what we're used to. Yeah.
Thank you. And that's going to be the last question.
Princess Colombo doesn't have a range of cruise weapons, does it? They say we should have one. We don't rely on offense to the southern.
Yeah, well, at the Army level, ranges and training areas in British Columbia aren't quite there yet, John. But the need to have ranges and training areas that can support everything that I just talked about is well understood. And I would suggest in due course, there'll be a need for much more training area than what we've got right now. I would imagine British Columbia would be on the list there as well. At the moment, is there a plan for a big training area in BC? No, there is not.
Please join us in thanking the General. Well done. Nobody's on defaulters.
All right. Well, we've got to get the General wheels up here by 1:30. He's got to get back to the mainland. We thank you so much, sir, for taking your valuable time with us today and giving us a window on what the Army's working on. And I would say in helping to get this out to the public, we're all out there with our networks. It's critical, as you've intimated, that we are facing a national emergency. And one of the key criteria will be that we activate and engage the national will to support this. Not just the Army, but the armed forces in general. So thank you for that. And in recognition, we have a presentation for you. This is a photo essay book done by one of our members, Blair Ketchison. Stand up, Blair, if you wouldn't mind. He's just a creative and wonderful photographer, and those are portraits of Vinnie.
Perfect.
So thank you so much, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks very much.